What's up, everybody? Welcome to Podcast Now Plus. I'm Alex, and in this video, I want to go over the new Final Fantasy VII news, and I guess Final Fantasy VII in terms of literally everything. So some of the spin-off stuff, this game, I guess Final Fantasy VII Intergrade, and also, in my opinion, because I always look to the future instead of focusing on the present, is Final Fantasy VII Part 2. Okay, so this comes from a Twitter thread over on obviously on Twitter from Nibel. Again, we've actually talked about him many times in the past. An insanely good guy to follow, along with myself, I would say personally. But this honestly, he's a great guy to follow over on Twitter. So there's a new interview with our favorite gaming creator, Tetsuya Nomura. Hopefully, he's honestly, after reading this, I feel like he works on like 500 things at any given time. Okay, like he's working on Kingdom Hearts at the same time he's working on this, at the same time he's working on other stuff. So here's the deal. Episode Yuffie has new summons and materia. Only Yuffie is playable. You can fight together with Sonin during combat, pressing L2 as seen in the trailer. No further DLC planned, focusing on Part 2 for now. So that last part is definitely one of the biggest things I want to personally focus on, is that, and he breaks down even more that there may be DLC for Part 2. When Part 2 comes out, maybe there can be DLC. Maybe there can actually be more DLC for that game than there was this game, but they never even really planned to do something like this, really, and that they want to do this, they're going to get this out there, and then they're going to move on. Or they've already moved on because they're working on Part 2, and they have been for quite some time. Nomura clarifies that originally they had only planned to make a PS5 version of Final Fantasy VII, Remake, instead of DLC. So they only wanted to do that upgrade part. They never wanted to do DLC. Intergrade helped the team to prepare for the development on the PS5. The transition of the sequel development went smoothly. Future DLC could be considered after the next big game is out, which is obviously Part 2. Final Fantasy VII The First Soldier is an attempt to reach other audiences who are not close to the Final Fantasy brand. It seems to have a job system with different abilities. Nomura, it wants this to be a solid experience with amazing visuals for smartphones. Again, pushing the medium wherever he can possibly get a game to release. And then on Ever Crisis, chapters will be free, but there will be a gacha system for weapons. Contains content that is not in the original game. The original Final Fantasy VII story is about 10 chapters long in Ever Crisis. Will tackle the story of the First Soldier 2 and more. And then again, finally, my favorite part of this is, and then the way he words this is hilarious too. Nomura promises more Final Fantasy VII related news and announcements in the next year and the year after that. And then Nibel says this seems to just be the beginning. So, I'm really excited. There's so much going on with Final Fantasy in general, and I've said it before, I'm not the biggest fan in the world. In fact, I watched my sister play the Lightning games, the Lightning trilogy. I personally played Final Fantasy 15. I didn't play it all the way through, but I heard great things about the story, especially the ending, so I regret that. But Final Fantasy VII's Remake was really the first jump into... I've played Kingdom Hearts ever since the very beginning, and I get that's not exactly the same, but I would say it's close enough. But Final Fantasy VII Remake was my first main jump into the franchise, and I was just, like I said, it's my game of the year for 2020. It's one of my favorite games ever created. So I'm so impressed with it, and I'm happy basically just to see more of it. We've talked about Intergrade in general, that I was okay. I was questioning, I guess, again, whether when they bring it to PS5, do you have to pay for it again? Is it a game of the year kind of thing? What additional stuff would they add if they did make you pay, because then they have to make it worth it, right? So we've talked about that. I'm okay with all of that stuff. I can't wait to play that DLC. I'm a little bummed out that the Yuffie, episodes, and I believe it's 2 episodes. I guess it's 2 chapters in all, or 2 or 3 chapters in all. Her stuff comes out literally one day before Ratchet and Clank Rift Apart, which is pretty, I wouldn't say lame. That makes it sound a little too bad, but it's definitely not convenient, okay, for somebody, let's say like me, right? June 10th and June 11th will be very, very busy days. But besides, I guess, the inconvenient timing, I'm very much excited for it. The other stuff, like the mobile game and then Ever Crisis, to be honest, I don't really care for all that much. But again, they're just ways of, in my opinion, expanding Final Fantasy and getting playing it in front of people that have never played these games before, that don't know much about it. And, it's Tetsuya Nomura, so I always think there's going to be a layer of complexity that'll, like, there'll always be like an entry barrier where it's like you do have to make a commitment in order to play these kind of games, just like Kingdom Hearts. I guess you can play Kingdom Hearts very nonchalantly, very like casually, but in reality, you'd be missing out on kind of the entirety of Kingdom Hearts. I mean, if you're playing Kingdom Hearts just for the Disney stuff, you're obviously not. You are playing Kingdom Hearts, that's for sure, but are you really, though? You know what I mean? So I think it's honestly maybe slightly different, but it's the same thing for Final Fantasy in general. You really need to kind of commit yourself into this world. And then obviously, again, the future. So I read that honestly as, well, look, Final Fantasy VII came out 1 year ago. Okay, so now I think we've already passed, or about to pass the 1 year anniversary of it. We get Intergrade in June, and then next year, could we see the announcement for Part 2? I honestly feel like we could. I mean, a lot of the systems, a lot of the kind of the way they design things, the art and whatnot, a lot of that is already set in stone. If they were to do a trailer next year, and so 2022, and then 2023, they were to have the game released, that'd be 3 years after this one. And, we know that remakes, I'm not saying remakes are easy, I'm not saying any game is ever easy to make, but if we've learned kind of anything about remakes in general, is that they do go a lot faster. Now, they are changing things around, and Final Fantasy is very cutscene heavy, which is not a bad thing. In fact, I actually love it. I think the visuals of the cutscenes are some of the most beautiful things ever created. But like they are. So could that make it take a little bit longer? Sure. But in reality, I mean, we see, again, like Blue Point, who makes, Demon Souls. They've made, Shadow of the Colossus and a lot of other games. They can get remakes turned around in 2 to 3 years, okay? Other developers, really anybody that's worked on the Crash stuff or even Spyro, it really hasn't taken them all that long. 2 to 3 years is kind of, I'd say, the average. That doesn't mean I'm forcing it or that I need the game out. Obviously, I want it, but if it takes them 4, plus years, whatever. But I really do think they can get this thing out probably in 3 years. So if next year they do the trailer, the following year, maybe around the same time, right, first half of the year of 2023, we get Part 2, 3 years after Part 1, makes sense. And I guess it is more of a selfish point of view, and I did say this when, I guess Part 1 came out, is that especially someone like me, so like I know certain things about the original Final Fantasy VII, but I don't know everything. And again, I understand they've changed some stuff, but like to have this game be split up, say, into like 3 parts, which I do think it'll end up being just a trilogy, to have that be separated between like 6-7 years that is what's going to happen. There's really no way around it, but that does still kind of suck because, again, I guess I could just play the original, right? But if this is the very first time you're doing it, you have no intention of doing, playing the original, and this is how you want to experience it. Yeah, I mean, to get the full Final Fantasy VII experience, you will have to wait. It's like it's the longest episodic game thing you've ever seen in your life. It's doing Telltale or Don't Nod by 10. You know what I mean? So, like, selfishly, that does kind of suck, but I mean, at this point, I've learned truly to just accept it. I really don't care all that much. It's just something that obviously, the quicker they can do it, I think the more fluid it'll feel in general when you're playing this game. So we'll just have to see how it goes. But I'm very excited, again, for the Yuffie stuff. I will be playing it. I'll be covering it for Part 2 whenever that comes out. Same thing. I'll be playing it, covering it. So I'm very, very pumped. So let me know, guys, in the comments below, what do you think about all this stuff, about the Yuffie DLC, about the, Ever Crisis and the mobile game, about Final Fantasy VII Part 2. Let me know. As always, make sure you guys are subscribed to this channel. Hit the bell icon so you guys know when all these videos go up. I do a brand new video every single day over here on this channel, and so I hope to see you guys for tomorrow's video.